Welcome to the Solo TV 84 podcast, also known as the Solo Cast, the official YouTube version of The Soloist, which can be found on Spotify. Okay, now the YouTube version is more YouTube friendly to follow the YouTube terms of service, TOS, right? And let's get straight into it. I'm your gracious host, Solo. So, for those of you who've been listening to me for the last, year, I've been talking about inflation a lot. If you've been listening to me for the last 6 months, I've been talking about AI a lot. If you've been listening to me for the last 3 years, then you've heard me talk about the food shortage. And if you've been hearing me for the last 7 years, then you've heard me talk about dating, okay? So today we're going to talk about all of these things, and I'm going to tie them in. And I'm basically going to read a conversation that I was having on a forum and really that put everything together that I've been thinking about, right? So let's get straight into it. And shout out to Sing Helios. He made this post. He says, I've been noticing a trend on YouTube where a lot of channels are popping up that are dedicated to the issues that young men are facing in the current dating market. I've also noticed that these channels are attracting a lot of attention, something you can see with their view counts, and this shows that men are relating to what is being discussed. I've also seen this trend even spilling over into the mainstream media recently, such as the stat where 2/3 of men are being single, and these numbers are being discussed on a news channel. Let me stop right there and interject. Yeah, the reason why it's now being discussed more than ever, including publicly, is because of the fact that it is a real issue that the mainstream media now can't deny anymore. And with the rise of recently your Kevin Samuels, Andrew Tates, and Sneakos, as well as Fresh and Fits, right? With the rise of men, the manosphere, and men, certain men talking about, these dating dynamics and issues, there's a reason why now the mainstream media can't deny it anymore or try to sweep it under the table, because the issue is that for the last 10 years, we've been hearing about all this wokenism. For the last, 30, 40 years, feminism has been shoved down our throats among some other agendas. You guys know what's going on if you pay attention, right? So when you have all of these things that are happening simultaneously, right? And men are being ostracized, scrutinized, and criticized, and there's no pushback, well, eventually there's going to be pushback. And that is what's starting to happen now. And this is one of the reasons why you see all these podcasts popping up, all these YouTube men's channels popping up, because of the fact that there is an audience of that. And I've said this before on my podcast, that men should have, safe spaces. Men should have spaces where we can get together and talk unfiltered and not have to worry about political correctness or some other BS wokey woke junk, right? And unfortunately, if you try to have a space for men that is public, well, guess what happens? It gets censored or shadow banned, right? Just like my channel is shadow banned right now. Anyway, let me continue reading. The millennial generation has for a long time now been adults in the dating market, and Gen Zers are starting to enter it now. I believe that the issue where young men are struggling to even get a date, let alone a girlfriend, is going to be a trend that is here to stay, that will have quite severe consequences for society. I feel a really good view on how things will play out in America is to look at places like Japan. This has been, mentioned for years already, right, by certain content creators, how the dating market is morphing and whatnot. And you see the reality of dating. If you look at some of the reasons why millennials and Gen Zers are having issues dating is, number one, is because of economic conditions, right? And I know people want to talk about feminism all the time, but if we really break it down, right, if we were to keep it 100, number one is the economic conditions. If you look at what happened in 2008, if you go back down that far, right, for a lot of millennials that just came out of college, right, what happens? There were no jobs. So imagine, right, even myself at one point in 2010, I was trying to get hired at McDonald's just because I didn't have a job in 2010 for like a 6-month period. And they said I was overqualified, right? And so that's the reality, is like, now where millennials or previous generations would have gone out and would have had jobs, millennials now went out, and now you're competing to get McDonald's jobs with people that have master's degrees or people that are overqualified to have a McDonald's job. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying I have a master's degree, not even close, but you guys get the point, right? So when you look at that, 2008, I don't think that we have recovered from 2008, even 15 years later, because of the fact that all they did with the whole banking situation is they put a Band-Aid over a gash wound. You know what I'm saying? Also, if you look at what happened 3 years ago, back in March of 2020, with the C-19, you guys know what I'm talking about. These events basically have a lasting impact on job prospects and income stability for many young men, right? Making it harder for them to afford traditional dating expenses, because if you look at it, the economic conditions then factor into the rise of cost of living, where you're talking about housing, education, aka paying off student loans, right? Healthcare and other essential expenses have been steadily on the rise. Rent has gone up crazy. I mean, my rent has gone up, you know what I'm saying, 10% over the last 2 years, you know, maybe 20 over the last 3, you know what I'm saying? And the reality is that when you look at all these financial pressures, that leaves less disposable incomes to a lot of young men, okay? Then you factor in other changing dynamics. I mean, feminism is one that I've talked about for years, right? But dating norms are starting to change, right? Expectations are starting to change. Now you have this whole wokey woke business of genders and all binary and non-binary and all intersectionality. Now you have a bunch of terms that didn't even exist 10 years ago. You have a bunch of different train of thoughts that didn't exist 10 years ago, you know? And also, if you look at the ever increasing pressure of social media creates a perception of an idealized dating lifestyle, leading to some individuals to feel that they need to spend more money on dates or gifts to meet expectations. And a lot of that is based off of fantasy, superficiality, narcissism, and not reality, right? The average guy and woman is not going to live an Instagram lifestyle where they're traveling every other weekend or every month, and then they're doing all this fly shit. Now, we see people on Instagram that are trying to portray that lifestyle, but how many of those people are truly happy? I see a lot of single women, for example, that are always taking these trips out of the country or out of town, but then if you know these women personally, you know that they are looking for a husband or a boyfriend, but they can't find one. Not because they're awkward or they're ugly women. No, that's actually the opposite. They tend to be pretty women. Not all of them, but some of them. They tend to be pretty women, and they tend to be very good in social settings. But the reality is that these women are extremely picky when it comes to their mate selection, and they want to have a certain guy that can show them off, that they can insert into their life to project a certain type of image, okay? Now, let's continue with this, because I don't want to, this is a very good thing here, so let's continue. A large number of men are literally being told by women they aren't good enough, essentially being rejected by society. I believe that given enough of these experiences and the right set of circumstances, you will see these men check out entirely. You'll definitely see some mental health issues with this, such as an increased use in antidepressants, anxiety medications, etc. However, I feel the bigger impact will be men that will focus on enjoying their own lives as they see fit. This will vary depending upon the individual, but some negative things would be gambling, excessive video game use, drug use, alcohol, etc. DraftKings, for example, which is a gambling website, this took off starting from the time of the C-19 and is not legal in many states. You might see men that believe there's a little incentive to put extra effort into anything, essentially to do the bare minimum. What's the point of busting your ass at a job or grinding through a difficult degree program when it doesn't make a difference? You basically have a pool of men that will just get by in life because they know nothing they do matters. Now that's a black pill for you, right? This is very depressing, but the reality is, when you start to think about it, right? Everybody likes to cite that classic OkCupid survey where women thought that 80% of men weren't attractive enough, or 80% of men were, average or below average or something like that, right? I forgot the exact study, right? The reality is that now, everybody always talks about high value men on these podcasts and shows, right? But the reality is that 80% of men that listen to those type of shows are average men, right? Let's keep it a buck. 80% of the men are average. The men that are in the top 20%, they're not complaining. They're not. Why? Because they're eating good, right? When you start to see some of these guys, and like I said, you guys know I've been among some very high status people, even not just locally where I live, but also nationally. And I'm not saying that to brag, right? But I'm just using this as an anecdotal reference here. But these type of guys, they're not worried about women ghosting them. These guys are worried about, I have 3 girls lined up today and I don't have time for all 3 of them, The average guy doesn't have that problem. The average guy's problem is I gotta, I'm getting flaked on, or much less I can't even get a date. If you go on these swipe apps, for example, I remember I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he was getting 20 matches a week a few years ago on Tinder and whatnot, right? And now he's like, yo, if I get 1 match a day, I'm lucky, And the reality is, how many men can even say that? Because me personally, it's like, if I get 1 match on Tinder every other day, you know what I'm saying? And that's really, really low. But now, in 2023, you got to really put in more effort if you're an average guy to get the same results that you got 10 years ago. And I remember 10 years ago, even though I was younger then, even then I had to bust my ass. But at least, it was still a lot, compared to today, it was a lot easier to get a date. Now, I will say that if you, since we're talking about online dating, right, that it may be harder, but then it's also, once you do get a date, then it's a lot easier, because now if a woman is willing to go on a date with you, then, typically the women tend to be either hot or cold. And by cold I mean like lukewarm. But I digress. Let me continue here. I also believe that many factors outside of the dating market as a whole are at play as well. I believe that the rapid increase in housing prices is a huge buffer for mating. I also believe that the current woke culture is a deterrent to many things, but with the dating market being one of them, stuff like this just further isolates people and draws them inward. I believe that the C-19 situation, the lockdowns, accelerated this trend towards isolation. I believe that much of what we're seeing is the actual planning panning out, out of the population collapse in the developed world. In East Asia, it's already been a slow trend for a long time that is now starting to show itself. We can even see these nations panicking about their demographic future. However, we can see as much more severe case in the former Soviet bloc countries in Eastern Europe, which have lost significant portions of their populations since the fall of the Iron Curtain. The US and Western Europe will temporarily be immune to this due to immigration, but I believe this will not make much of a difference. We're going to see a rapidly aging population where fewer and fewer children are being born. Wow, that hit different, right? And it makes sense, because if you think about it, right, and he's going to talk about this in depth more in detail here, but the reality is now, as I mentioned earlier, because of the rising costs, one of the determinants of one of the things that keeps a lot of people from having kids is that they can't afford it. They can't afford it. A lot of millennials can't even buy a house, right? And there are a lot of people that have an idea of how they want their life to play out. They want to maybe get the good career, then they get the wife or husband, then they get the nice house, and then they have the kid, right? That's typically like a standard modus operandi for like the American dream, or how most people like to pursue things, right? But the reality is a lot of people aren't even getting the house. Millennials, Gen Z, most of us still live at home. Not all of us, I'm just saying a lot of people still are living at home. And so when you have rising costs, that doesn't really give excitement, or gives you excitement to make babies or even practice. Like imagine you're 30 years old and you're trying to, get a girl on a date, and then you got to park the car in a park. Like, what are we in high school? Anyway, let me continue. The higher powers in the world are quite aware of this major demographic change that is on the way. Elon Musk has discussed this issue, and it's something that is a secret concern of many nations. AI technology and automation are naturally already on the way, but I expect a heavy investment in those fields due to the eventual dwindling of the working age population. The technology isn't quite there yet, but by the middle of the century, I believe it will be quite advanced. This will undoubtedly bring tremendous change to society as a whole, though it's hard to imagine how this will play out exactly. Now, I'm going to focus a lot of this podcast on that part, okay? Because I've been talking about AI a lot for the last 5 months, especially for those who've been following me on Patreon, right? Also, if you've been following me on YouTube, because I've been back now for 2 months, I've talked about the AI thing, because I really think a lot of people don't understand the ramifications of AI. And the reality is that AI is moving at a rapid pace. It's moving faster than anybody could expect, okay? When you have people like Elon Musk, who's respected by a lot of people, and Jeffrey Hinton, who's the godfather of AI, put out warnings and say that, hey, we need to slow this down. This is going too fast, right? Jeffrey Hinton is known as the godfather of AI. He's the one whose research helped to enable the rise of AI technology, such as, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and Google Bard, all of that, right? Jeffrey Hinton, he's the godfather when it comes to AI, right? He is saying that, hey, time out. We need to fall back because this is moving at a rapid pace, right? And even Elon Musk has mentioned that there should be some legislation. Now, the reality is, I already have talked about this on YouTube, but I think that it's very important to talk about it again, is that in the next 10 to 20 years, you're going to see AI advance rapidly. We're already seeing what it's doing with these deep fakes and this AI music, right? But imagine within the next 10 to 20 years, movie studios, you can make a blockbuster movie literally from your bedroom, right? Because you're not going to need a crazy movie studio because of how advanced the AI is getting. I saw an AI of like a fake Tom Cruise a couple weeks ago, of a guy that he kind of resembles Tom Cruise, but then when he does the AI on his face, he looks exactly like him. It's really spooky. Now, when you take the AI off, he doesn't look like Tom Cruise at all, right? And these deep fakes and whatnot that people do, I mean, that's going to be a concern in the future where now let's say you're running for politics and then somebody is then coming out with a fake video to expose you, to insinuate that you said something that you didn't, right? But the reality is that when I look at this AI situation, a lot of the jobs that you see now, accounting, data entry, warehouse workers, in the next 10 to 20 years, those jobs are going to start to disappear. And AI is going to take over all industries from, whether it's the retail industries, right? Like, even malls and things of that sort, all the way to the financial sector, particularly in the financial sector. Because why would you need bank tellers when you have AI that can count money and dispense money better than a human could? Why would you need an accountant when the AI can keep accurate numbers up to the nanosecond? You know what I mean? So when you look at that, and also with the rise of centralized bank digital currencies, right? CBDCs, we're moving to a cashless system. And a lot of people are just thinking that, this sounds like some future Star Wars or Star Trek type talk. No. The Fed now is scheduled to go live in July of 2023, right? Now, basically, that's the Fed now is their version of real-time payment service that'll allow you to get money faster. So basically, it's like Cash App, but the government's version. And all these things, when you start to think about it, PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, they've been training you, yes, you for years, on digital payments. A lot of people who might be against this, if you think about it, you can go to a store, buy some food or buy some items, and you don't even need a credit card anymore. You can do what's known as Apple Pay, right? Where you take out your iPhone, or Google Pay. So you don't even need your credit card anymore. If you got your card stored in your cell phone, that is done digitally, right? And so now the government is moving towards that. And eventually, I do think within the next, 10 to 20 years, you're going to start to see a crazy wave of people moving from, cash, US dollars over to the digital side. But people don't realize the consequences that come with it. Because now, where cash gives you freedom to buy things and, the powers that be don't know, if you move over to the CBDC side of things, right, now they're able to monitor all your transactions to the nanosecond. They can monitor what you're buying, when you're buying it. And the fact of the matter is, there's been talk about a social credit score. Now imagine your social credit score is tied with your ability to buy and sell. I mean, everything that I'm talking about, people think it sounds crazy, right? But they've been training you already for decades. Look at, as I mentioned earlier, look at PayPal, look at Venmo, look at Cash App. These are all done digitally, right? These are all done digitally. So when people look at when people think about a CBDC system, right? When we talk about, and once again, CBDC stands for central bank digital currencies. It's not going to be some crazy thing. It's already something that, the infrastructure that we are at right now has been kind of, set up to do. Now, granted, it's going to look completely different, but what I'm saying is, if you're already using your Google Wallet or your Apple Wallet to pay for things, your iPhone, Google Pay, and Apple Pay to pay for things, then digitally you are already doing it, okay? But the CBDCs is basically gonna be take away your any type of privacy or freedom that you can think about, and unfortunately, that will be a precursor to the mark of the beast, because that's what they're trying to move it to. I mean, it's in Revelations, right? They're trying to move this to a one world government, okay? And I think that unfortunately these are steps that'll lead us there. Now, let me bring this back a moment. What you're gonna see in the future, and this is me just giving my hypothetical here and speculating, of course, right? Is that the fact of the matter is that you have an aging population, the boomers that are going to be here dying, right? The workforce is going to need people to work. Well, guess what? Are we going to just keep bringing in certain people that don't, like these Gen Zers that don't want to work because they want to travel, and then we're going to pay them a lot? No. We're going to bring in these cheap AI robots that'll never ask for vacation. They don't even ask for a bathroom break. You can keep those AIs pumping 24/7. And then imagine if the AI's productivity, these AI robots, have far superior productivity than human beings. And then the cost of upkeep is going to be a lot more, it's going to be minimal compared to having an actual person. Okay? And so when you start to think about all these things this technology will do, right? And how this will affect dating. For example, they're already talking about you can have an AI girlfriend that, is going to be an AI woman that'll text you every day and make conversations with you. She'll ask you how your day is. She'll ask you, how you're feeling. And then she'll even leave voice notes. And I've seen this. There's a paid service. There's Amurath, who's a popular Twitch streamer. She has a service like that. Now imagine, 30, 40 years from now, not only can you have a fake AI girlfriend to pretend to call you and message you on the phone, but 30, 40 years from now, the technology is going to be on such a level now where the AI girlfriend is a robot and you can't tell the difference between the robot and the human. And you know what? Unfortunately, that technology is coming. I think that we're 30 to 50 years out on that personally, but I do think that there are some people that they're going to see that in their lifetime. And me personally, I'm not for that. I'm not here to look. I know women can be a pain in the butt, let's be honest, but I think that it's another level of degeneracy when you start about when you have humans, and there will be humans that decide that they want to be partnered with a robot, right? Now, in the immediate future, though, I do see that for men that are dating or want to, get married, things are going to get tough. Why? We're still dealing with hyperinflation, okay? And how hyperinflation affects dating is that you're paying for more, right? You're paying for more to go on dates. You're paying for more to get on dates. You got to put gas in your tank, right? Gas prices have been going up. Housing prices are up, right? So basically, hyperinflation decreases your purchasing power because we know that the value of the dollar has been going down, especially in the last 3 years because of the C-19. So your spending power, and I've talked about this before too a little bit in the past, but your spending power goes down. So now you have to make decisions. Do I buy basic necessities or do I buy luxuries? Because see, this is how we take things for granted in America. If you can take a woman out to even Starbucks, that's a luxury in most countries. That is a luxury. Your ability to take a woman out, even if it's just to Starbucks, right? To buy a $10 coffee or $15 coffee, that's a luxury. There are places in the world where they don't even have running water. So you think they're gonna, without, they don't even have water. You think they're gonna waste their money going to Starbucks? No, it's a luxury, okay? So when you look at the economic instability right now that's happening in this world, okay? The debt ceiling crisis. Let's talk about that. I've talked about that a little bit, but let's talk about that. So in the United States, for those who are not aware, the debt ceiling or debt limit is a legislative limit, the amount of national debt that can be incurred by the U.S. Treasury, thus, limiting how much money the federal government may pay by borrowing more money or the debt that's already borrowed. So the debt ceiling is an aggregate figure that applies to gross debt, which include debt in the hands of the public and intra-government accounts, okay? Now, if you look at the debt, and I'm pulling out the debtclock.org, right? USA got $31 trillion in national debt. China is second with 14. Japan is third with 13 trillion. Germany at 3.3 trillion for their national debt. UK is actually higher than Germany at 3.7. Then you have India, France, and Italy, okay? So now you have Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen, I believe, saying, at first she was sounding the alarm, saying that June 1st the country could go broke. Then it was June 5th. Now you got experts saying that it would be sometime at the end of June, early July, okay? Now, there are rumors behind the scenes that they've already gotten agreement on the books, but they're trying to play it out until the last minute, okay? Why am I saying that? Because once again, when you have a lot of these people that, especially on the manosphere side of YouTube, right? They're always talking about women and dating and feminism, right? But they're not talking about the economic factors that affect men. The fact of the matter is that who can date if your rent is always increasing every year? How can you date? When you have millennials and Gen Zers that live at home and don't have a lot of money or are broke, how can you date? Or how can you go out and meet women, right? And see, the reason I'm tying this all in is because all of this stuff is interconnected, right? Your economic viability affects your ability to go out there and date. It affects your ability to travel. It affects your ability to buy things that you want to buy, right? Your purchasing power is going down, right? 1/3 of what the debt incurred happened because of the C-19 situation, right? And so when you start to look at the fact that we're living in an era now where hyperinflation is a real thing. We're living in an era now where there was a drought last year, and they're talking about another drought possibly this year. And we're still dealing with a food shortage, which I've been talking about for the last 3 years. People thought I was joking. You go to your grocery store, a pack of chicken wings costs $20 now. The large carton of eggs that used to be $3 are $10 now. Your produce prices for certain fruits and vegetables are just through the roof as well, right? All of these things play a huge part, okay? And so when he's talking about the fact that the technology isn't quite there yet, but by the middle of the century, I believe it will be quite advanced, yes. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. It kind of scares the shit out of me because of the fact of the matter is that this AI thing is going to be so rapid, it's going to catch a lot of people off guard. You're going to see VR, virtual reality, and metaverse, right? It's going to just take off. It's going to be massive. I've been talking about that since 2021 when, the metaverse, cryptos were booming, right? But it's going to be massive. You're going to see new forms of entertainment that you haven't even thought of. And unfortunately, with this AI and automation, It's going to increase the wealth gap, where the wealthy are going to keep getting wealthier and the poor are going to keep getting poor, and the middle class is going to erode. It's weird. It's kind of like, it reminds me of LA, right? You ever been to LA? You go to a nice part in LA, it's nice. You see nothing but nice palm trees, big old mansions. It looks lit, right? Then you just drive 10 minutes east. You just got to drive. And the next thing you know, you're like in the hood. It's like a very stark contrast, where you're going to start seeing more of that, where you're going to see wealthy, super incredible wealth, and then right next to it, you're going to see extreme poverty. And you're already starting to see that, right? And so the reality is that society is going to change in ways that I don't think a lot of people can imagine. Like, when you start talking about people putting chips in their heads, which, by the way, I will never do, but chips that would increase your intelligence 1,000-fold, right? Where now you can have a chip that you don't even have to go to a movie. It'll just visualize or project the movie like in front of you, and you're able to access and tap into the internet. There are already people that want to live that life, right? There are people that want to get into that. Me personally, I don't want to get into that, because I'm not trying to be a cyberpunk. You know what I'm saying? Where now I've got metal and transhumanism and stuff like that. And that's a topic too that I talked about, where, and that technology I think is with the chips. I mean, you can start that technology is within 10 years, but the whole metal parts and stuff like that, I mean, I don't know about that. I'm not rocking with that. That's just me being honest. While this all sounds like, let me finish this then. While this all sounds like doom and gloom, I think there's something else that will come from this. I believe that down the road, more conservative and traditional values are going to take hold. The West is a cultural mess due to the woke nonsense, but I believe that this is a phase that we are going through. I believe that the younger generations are slowly starting to reject the nonsense and seeing it for what it is. Political leanings are often based on personality and temperament, qualities that have strong genetic link. I see the more liberal-minded individuals essentially not reproducing at all, and those along more conservative lines having children. Think about those that go to church or grow up in more traditional family settings. These are the ones that will have children. The man that is a feminist or self-sterilizes himself by thinking he's a woman will not have children. I believe that as the century progresses, we will see a shift towards this, though not before we see a tremendous decline in population. Yeah, I totally agree with that, right? I think that, as I said earlier, things have gone so far left that now you have these agendas just pushing all types of evil, And what's happening now is that, as he mentioned at the beginning of this post, and by the way, shout out to St. Helios for this. This really inspired me to make this podcast. The reality is that there's a silent majority, right? A silent majority that are not rocking with this whole woke nonsense. A silent majority that believes in traditional values. Now, I know that there are a lot of men, especially in the RP side, that think that trad cons are living a Disney fairy tale, or they're living an outdated method. But me personally, I look at the trad cons as the last line of defense. Because at least the trad cons, in my opinion, they're willing to go out there, protest, and be in the ops' faces in debates and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? Where a lot of RP guys, they're sitting down, they just really be doing YouTube videos. They're not really active on the streets like that. You know what I mean? Like, to me, going on a podcast or going on different shows is not really being active. I mean, that's being active on YouTube. But I'm talking about some of these trad cons. I've seen them be active, like literally go against the ops in these protests and marches. The Roe versus Wade protests, for example, or some of these weirdo marches that they have, and they pull right up, But the reality is that there's a silent majority, not just of men, but women as well, that are looking at this and they're like, what is going on in the world right now? What is going on in the world right now when you want to push agendas on young children who don't even know who they are yet? What is going on in the world right now when you basically have the media blatantly try to make men seem like men are doing all the evil things, and it's because of men these women aren't getting married? What is going on in the world right now? And there's so much, like, when you start to look at this situation, and I do think this is going to be an explosive summer. This is one of the reasons why with the debt ceiling, it's very important that you are aware of it. In 2008, I wasn't paying attention to any of that. I was just a young man who was just trying to figure out my way, right? And 15 years later now, 15 years ago, I didn't know what the debt ceiling was. I didn't know anything about consumer price index, CPI. I didn't know about the debt ceiling debt, what the number was, or understand the economic factors that the spending of your dollar that you have, right? I didn't know any of that. And now when you look at your purchasing power has continually declined, not just in the last 15 years in America, but in the last 100 has continually declined. Your dollar was worth more 100 years ago. You could get way more. You could get some candies. You can get a soda pop. Matter of fact, back in the 1950s, a cheeseburger at McDonald's was 10 cents. It was 10 cents. You could have bought 10 of them. You buy cheeseburgers at McDonald's now, right? 10 cheeseburgers, that'll probably cost you for $40-50. 100 years ago, you could get that for, McDonald's wasn't open 100 years ago, but 60 to 70 years ago, you could get that for $1, right? And so you got to realize that we're in a state now where a lot of things are happening. We have conflict in China, right? When I'm talking about conflict in China, I'm talking about the China-Taiwan situation, right? We've got the Russia-Ukraine situation still going on. And then you have cost of living going up. These economic conditions causing hardships, not just for Gen Zers and millennials, but for everybody. You have changing dating dynamics where now you have degeneracy being pushed at an all-time high. You have dating norms changing where now everybody wants to push these polyamorous relationships like they're cool, or these open relationships like they're cool. Meanwhile, according to the CDC, STDs are still going up, right? STDs are going up like crazy, right? And I even heard, and I haven't verified this yet, that there may be 2 new STDs out there, right? And so the reality is that we live also in an era now where Gen Zers and millennials are being bogged down by student loan debt. And then, of course, social media. What are the ramifications of social media? We don't even know that yet. How that affects you. Well, we know that mentally it causes more anxiety and depression. And that's one of the reasons when people ask me, yo, man, why you never like my Instagram pictures? Because I don't be on the gram like that. If you look at my phone summary, right? Matter of fact, I haven't been on Instagram all week. Like, my thing is this. On average, if I'm on Instagram, it's like 15 minutes a day. That's on average. Same with Snapchat. I don't try to be on, like, I'm not going to lie. I'll be on YouTube, though. I'll be on YouTube. I'm not going to lie. But I just don't have time to watch other people live their lives when I want to live my own. I just don't. I'm not looking at what everybody's doing every 5 seconds. I'm too busy trying to live my own life to be worried about what somebody else is doing. Because if I'm not at the level that I want to be at, then I shouldn't be having no time to be on Instagram. That's my mentality, right? So I look at this situation, and somebody asked me, "Hey, Solo, what should you do with these situations happening with AI in the future and whatnot?" And the number one thing I would say is, man, get your life and relationship right with God, because right now we're moving into times where, you know what I'm saying, it's nothing to play with. And I know a lot of people don't like it when I talk like that, but the reality is that we live in such a fallen world, fallen state, that loneliness will continue to increase, where debauchery and degeneracy will continue to go up. And honestly, there's really no fulfillment in that. Like I said, I'm just being honest with you. I know a lot of men are listening to these podcasts, and they all want to have 4 or 5 women that you smash. You know what? That's about nothing. Because at the end of the day, if you need 4 or 5 women to make you happy, right? What does that say about you? And that's going to go over a lot of people's heads. But the reality is, get your life right with God, bro. Because like it says in the Bible, seek the kingdom of God first, and everything shall be added onto you. You know what I'm saying? I really mean that. Number 2, start to understand what is going on, not just in your state or city, but in your country financially. Okay, understand what is happening. What is the inflation rate in your country? What is the debt in your state? What are some legislature that they're looking to pass? Start to not just understand the finances from a number step point of view, but also from a political point of view, because there's a lot of politics that are tied into this. And look, guys, I'm not here to push be Democrat or be Republican. You guys know I don't push political parties or whatnot, right? I have my beliefs, but what I'm saying is this: start to understand what politicians or political parties are motivated by, what type of fiscal policy or legislature that they want to pass. Really understand that, because if you don't even know right now that they have in certain communities, they're raising taxes because of the school board might need more or something, you should know all that stuff, right? So financially, start to educate yourself, not just what's going on in your neck of the woods or what's going on in America, but also financially with the rest of the world, all right? And the number 3, man, you guys know what's coming: steady blockchain and crypto, okay? You really got to look into that. And I know, and I'm not here to sell anybody anything. I'm just here to simply tell you, you got to steady the future. Because as I already mentioned earlier, everything is going digital, right? With the CBDCs, everything is going digital. Crypto is also going to play a big part. So understand ISO 20022 protocol, what that is about. Learn that. Understand that. Understand why XRP is going through a case right now. Why XLM and XDC and XRP are going to be some of the heavy hitters in the future. Really learn that and do your due diligence on that, right? I'm not going to go in depth about that too much here, because you guys know that's like my bread and butter. I've talked about ISO 20022 coins for a minute now. Okay, so really do your research on that. But we're in a time right now where, and maybe I'm getting older, but there's a lot of change happening, right? A lot of change happening. I use ChatGPT myself. I use it to script my YouTube videos. I use ChatGPT in part of some of the scripting that I did so I wouldn't forget some of my talking points, right? But a lot of things are going to change, and a lot of things are going to change in a hurry. And the men that are going to be successful while all this AI and other tech booming happens, and as the world continues to change, the men that are going to be the most successful are the men that are going to be able to adapt. And they're going to be able to adapt at a drop of a dime, right? And the reality is, the people that won't be successful are the people that are not handling their priorities. It's very, very simple. So we're living in a world now where you're gonna have to be able to adapt on a dime, and you're gonna have to have vision. I mean, things are gonna change. We're not just talking about AI, robots, and automation, right? Because eventually, and shout out to all my truckers, but automation. I don't think truckers will ever be fully gone, but I do think that within 10 or 20 years, the trucking industry is not going to be what we see it today, right? But you also have to understand energy is going to change, right? What type of energy are we gonna? I'm pretty sure that there's gonna be energy, forms of energy that we haven't even thought of yet. 3D printing, nuclear fusion. I mean, 3D printing. Gosh, that's another topic in itself. Can you imagine they can 3D print houses and tools? What if they are able to then 3D print fully functional organs? You know what I'm saying? So a lot of this stuff, I know to people it sounds like a sci-fi movie or something like that, but we are closer to this than you can realize. And me personally, I'll be honest, I mean, I don't think all of this is going to be good. And that's another topic. But I don't think all of this is going to be good because the reality is that, we went from even to have a car, right? We went from a car to airplanes within 70 years. And that was a lot. Now imagine we go from where we at right now, ChatGPT, to freaking AI robots that look like humans within 50 years or less. That's some scary shit to think about. Excuse my language. It really is. I think that in the medical aspect, if we're talking about this, that diseases and cancers will virtually be non-existent, or most of them will be cured because of the rising technology. But a con that I see is people that will be addicted to AI and virtual reality, because in the virtual reality, you can be a superstar. You can be a guy that dates 8, 9s, and 10s, right? In virtual reality. But then in real life, when you're out of that VR world, you're married to a single mother. You know what I'm saying? And so the reality is that people will become addicted because you can create your own reality. Imagine you can create your own world or universe, and there will be VR celebrities, AI celebrities. You're going to see that. Within 20 years, I think you're going to start to notice. It's going to be like the movie Ready Player One, where the kid is a nobody in real life, but in the VR world, he's a freaking superstar. You're going to see AI musicians and actors that they're going to become very popular. And I think that's going to be within, 30, 40 years. A lot of this stuff is coming faster down the pike than people think. And my thing is, here's my thing, man. If you're watching this video and if you're still listening to the podcast and you're still listening now, then, you're a trendsetter. You are. All right, guys. Well, that is my my thing on AI and future dating, or AI and society, right? You guys are going to hear me talk about AI a lot. This really, really... It really, really, like, I don't think people understand. Like I said, when ChatGPT first came out, I was kind of sleeping on it, right? And then I started to fiddle around with ChatGPT, and I was like, what? Because people got to understand, like, when I do my PowerPoints, especially like the crypto ones, ChatGPT has saved me so much time. Like, people don't even understand, like, because some of those PowerPoints take me like a week to make. Right? With ChatGPT, where a PowerPoint can be anywhere from, 10 hours to like a week, ChatGPT has cut that time by like 3/4. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's amazing. But I do think that when we talk about this AI thing, and here's another thing, AI cryptos. AI cryptos have taken off like crazy. They took off like crazy in November, December, and January. They just were crazy. I think that AI cryptos are going to be trending again. And I mentioned that on Patreon, by the way, for those who are on www.patrn.com/solotv84. But AI cryptos, I think, are going to have a massive rally this summer or at the end of the year. Again, I think AI cryptos are going to go through the roof. So yeah, just a little thing. But anyway, guys, oh man, my time is up. I appreciate you for listening. It's your boy Jones. God bless you. God bless you. And I'm out. Peace.